So, let's start. Number 10. The Baghdad Battery. In 1936, workers digging near the ruins of an ancient Parthian settlement just outside Baghdad uncovered something that should not have been there. It was a small clay jar, about 5 inches tall. Inside the jar was a copper cylinder. Inside the cylinder was an iron rod. The components were sealed with asphalt at the top. To a modern engineer, that arrangement is instantly familiar. It is the basic design of a wet cell battery. The object was dated to roughly 2,000 years ago, long before electricity was officially discovered. Long before anyone in recorded history had any documented understanding of how to generate electric current. In 1940, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig published the first detailed analysis of the artifact. He suggested that if it had been filled with an acidic liquid such as vinegar or grape juice, the jar would have produced a small voltage, possibly around 1 volt, enough to electroplate jewelry, enough to deliver a mild shock for ritual purposes. Modern reconstructions have confirmed it works. Build a copy of the Baghdad Battery, fill it with vinegar, and it produces a measurable current. The mystery is not whether the object is a battery. The mystery is what an ancient civilization was doing with one. There are no historical records from the period describing the use of electricity. No surviving texts, no diagrams, no related artifacts found nearby that obviously needed an electrical source. The Baghdad Battery sits in storage today, in a museum, quietly being one of the strangest objects ever pulled out of the ground. A working piece of technology, 2,000 years too early, found in a place where it was not supposed to exist. Number 9. The Antikythera Mechanism. In 1901, a group of sponge divers off the coast of the small Greek island of Antikythera found the wreck of a Roman cargo ship at the bottom of the Aegean Sea. The ship had gone down sometime around the 1st century BC. Among the rotting timbers and the green-crusted statues, they pulled up a lump of corroded bronze about the size of a shoebox. Nobody knew what it was. For decades, the object sat in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, slowly cracking apart, mostly ignored. Then in the 1950s, a British science historian named Derek de Solla Price decided to take a closer look. He used X-ray imaging to peer inside the corroded mass. What he saw should not have existed. Inside the lump was a system of more than 30 interlocking bronze gears, machined to a precision that would not be matched anywhere else in the world for almost 1,500 years. Modern researchers, using high-resolution CT scans, have now mapped the entire device. It is a mechanical computer. It can predict the positions of the sun, the moon, and the planets. It can track the timing of solar and lunar eclipses. It contains a 4-year cycle dial that aligns with the Olympic Games. It was built sometime around 100 BC. There is no clear record of how. There is no surviving evidence of similar machines from the same period. The level of engineering inside the Antikythera mechanism vanished from human knowledge for over 1,000 years before reappearing in medieval European clockwork. It is the only known artifact of its kind. There is no second one. There is no factory it came from, no school that taught the math behind it, no clear cultural memory of its purpose. A piece of ancient computing lying at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, in a place no historian would have predicted it could exist. Number 8. The Voynich Manuscript. In 1912, a Polish-American rare book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich purchased a strange handwritten book from a Jesuit library in Italy. The book is about 240 pages long. It is illustrated with detailed drawings of plants, astronomical diagrams, naked women bathing in unusual green pools, and complex pipe-like structures. It is written from cover to cover in a script that no human being has been able to read. Carbon dating has placed the parchment of the manuscript to the early 15th century, somewhere between 1404 and 1438. The ink and binding are consistent with that period. The book is real. The script inside it is not fake. It follows linguistic patterns. It has a structure. It has repeated word endings, statistical regularities, everything a real language tends to show. But it does not match any known language on Earth. For over a century, the world's best cryptographers have tried to crack the Voynich Manuscript. Codebreakers from World War I, the team that helped break Enigma in World War II, modern artificial intelligence systems, none of them have succeeded. The plant illustrations are equally strange. Most of them do not match any known species. Some appear to be hybrids. Some look like plants that should not have existed in 15th century Europe. The astronomical diagrams show recognizable star patterns, but they are arranged in ways that do not align with standard medieval astrology. The Voynich Manuscript has been examined, photographed, scanned, and studied by some of the most intelligent minds of the last century. It refuses to give up its meaning. A book that should not still be unread, a language that should not still be undecoded, a piece of writing from the 1400s that continues, 600 years later, to look like it was placed in human hands by mistake. Number 7. Hammers in stone. In 1936, a hiker walking through the rocky cliffs near London, Texas, noticed something strange embedded in a layer of limestone. It looked like the head of a hammer, partially buried inside the rock. When the object was extracted, what came out was undeniably a hammer, with an iron head, a wooden handle, and clear signs of human craftsmanship. The handle had partially fossilized. The iron head had a small fragment of coal embedded inside it. The rock layer it was found in was estimated to be hundreds of millions of years old. For decades, the London hammer has been one of the most argued objects in fringe archaeology. Geologists who have examined it point out that limestone can form quickly around modern objects, especially in mineral-rich water. The hammer might be from the 1800s, accidentally trapped by a rapidly forming carbonate deposit. But the analysis of the iron is harder to dismiss. Tests on the metal have shown that the hammer head is made of an unusually pure form of iron with traces of chlorine, a combination that, according to materials scientists, modern industrial methods cannot easily reproduce. The hammer is not the only object of this kind. Similar artifacts have been pulled out of coal seams in Scotland, Russia, and the United States. A gold chain, a small bronze bell, an iron nail driven through solid rock. Most have simple explanations, a few do not. These objects, collectively called out-of-place artifacts, have never been formally accepted by mainstream science. They are too strange, they are too rare, and they are usually associated with collectors and amateur archaeologists rather than peer-reviewed studies. But they continue to exist. They continue to sit in private museums and dusty cabinets, quietly defying the idea that the history of human craftsmanship is well mapped. A hammer in a rock, a bell in a coal seam, objects found in places where, by every accepted timeline, they should not be. Number 6. The Saqqara Bird. In 1898, during excavations at the ancient tomb of Padimen in Saqqara, Egypt, archaeologists discovered a small wooden carving of what appeared to be a bird. It was about 6 inches long. It had a smooth body, wide outstretched wings, and a vertical tail fin. It was dated to roughly 200 BC. For decades, it sat in a museum drawer, classified as a child's toy. Then, in 1969, a doctor named Khalil Messiha noticed something unusual about the carving. The proportions of the wings did not match a real bird. The tail was vertical, not horizontal, the way a real bird's tail would be. In fact, the entire shape of the object was strikingly similar to the design of a modern glider aircraft. Messiha argued that the Saqqara bird was not a toy. It was a scale model of a working aerodynamic vehicle. Aerodynamic experts have tested the design. Modern reconstructions show that with the addition of a small horizontal stabilizer at the tail, which may have been part of the original carving but was lost, the shape would actually fly. It glides cleanly. It is stable in the air. Mainstream Egyptologists have generally rejected the idea that the ancient Egyptians built flying machines. There is no clear evidence of large gliders. There are no aircraft hangars in the ruins. There are no other working aerodynamic models from the period. But the Saqqara bird exists. It is sitting in the Cairo Museum. It is shaped with surprising precision, like something that should not have been designed for almost 2,000 more years. Whether it was a deliberate model of a glider or a stylized religious bird that simply happened to be aerodynamic, it remains one of the strangest objects ever found in an Egyptian tomb. Number 5. The Coso Geode. In 1961, 3 rock collectors named Mike Mikesell, Wallace Lane, and Virginia Maxey were exploring the Coso Mountains of California, looking for unusual minerals to sell at their small shop. They picked up what appeared to be a geode, a hollow stone with crystals inside. When they cut it open, they were not looking at crystals. In the center of the geode was a metal cylinder surrounded by what appeared to be a porcelain insulator with a small spring at one end. It was the internal structure of a spark plug. The geological context was the problem. Geodes form over hundreds of thousands of years. The crust of the stone they had picked up was studded with fossil shells and weathered minerals, consistent with much older formations. Mike Mikesell and his partners argued that the geode had to be at least 500,000 years old, based on the surrounding deposits. In the decades that followed, skeptics offered simpler explanations. The geode was probably not a true geode at all, but a nodule of clay and mineral that had formed naturally around a 1920s Champion brand spark plug, a process that, in the right conditions, could happen in just a few decades. Experts who later compared the cylinder to vintage spark plugs from the 1920s found close matches, but the object disappeared after the initial investigation. The original photographs are unclear. The skeptical explanation is reasonable, but has never been definitively confirmed, because the artifact itself can no longer be examined directly. What remains is the photograph, the story, and the basic problem. Either a piece of mid-20th century machinery was buried in a rapidly forming stone for a few decades, or something far stranger was placed in a place where it absolutely should not have been. Number 4. The Dropa Stones. In 1938, a Chinese archaeologist named Chi Pu-te reportedly led an expedition into a remote series of caves in the Bayan Har Mountains on the border of China and Tibet. Inside the caves, his team found something extraordinary. Carved into the cave walls were drawings of figures in what looked like spherical helmets, standing next to the sun, moon, and stars. Buried in the cave floor were the small skeletons of beings with unusually large heads and short, thin bodies. And scattered around the skeletons were hundreds of stone discs. Each disc was about 9 inches across, with a small hole in the center. Each disc had a fine spiral groove carved into its surface, very similar to the grooves on a modern vinyl record. According to the story, the discs were eventually taken to a laboratory for analysis. A researcher named Tsum Nui reportedly studied them and announced that the spiral grooves were not decorative. They were a form of writing, possibly the oldest written language ever discovered, telling the story of a group of beings who arrived from the sky thousands of years ago and crashed in the mountains. The local legend, supposedly preserved by a small mountain tribe called the Dropa, described the same event. The problem with the Dropa stones is that almost none of the original documentation has survived. The discs themselves are no longer in any major museum. The photographs are blurry, often taken from secondary publications. Some researchers believe the entire story is a hoax, fabricated in the 1960s. But the legend has refused to disappear. Every few decades, new versions of the story surface. The skeletons, the carvings, the discs. Mainstream archaeology dismisses the entire account. And yet, every now and then, a fragment surfaces that is hard to explain. Real or fabricated, the Dropa stones have become one of the most argued objects in the history of impossible artifacts. Number 3. The Klerksdorp Spheres. In the mines of Ottosdal near the town of Klerksdorp in South Africa, miners working through deep deposits of pyrophyllite have been pulling small metallic spheres out of the rock for decades. The spheres are about an inch across. Some are perfectly round, some are slightly flattened, like discs. Many of them have 3 or 4 parallel grooves cut into their equators, as if they were machined deliberately. The rock layer they are found in is dated to roughly 2.8 billion years old. This dating is not in dispute among geologists. The deposit itself formed long before any known life existed on Earth that could have built tools, long before there was animal life at all. Mainstream geology offers a natural explanation. The spheres are likely concretions, masses of mineral that have grown layer by layer inside cracks in the rock, slowly forming round shapes over millions of years. The grooves on the equators may simply be the result of internal pressure planes. But the natural explanation has weaknesses. The grooves on some spheres are unusually parallel. Several spheres show internal structures that are difficult to explain with normal concretion processes. A fibrous core, a shell that wobbles when balanced. One sphere, kept in a small museum in Klerksdorp, has been reported to slowly rotate on its display when no one is touching it. The Klerksdorp Spheres have been studied by professional geologists, fringe researchers, and amateur collectors for decades. The mainstream view is that they are natural. The minority view is that they are evidence of something that nobody is ready to say out loud. Either way, they are small, precise, and old. Far older than any object made by human hands should be. pulled out of rocks billions of years before the first tool was ever shaped. Number 2. The Maine Penny. In 1957, an amateur archaeologist named Guy Melgren was excavating a small Native American site on the coast of Maine in the United States. The site, known as the Goddard Site, had been continuously occupied by indigenous peoples for centuries, and it was full of stone tools, ceramic fragments, and trade goods. While sifting through the loose soil, Melgren found a small, corroded coin. It looked like a silver penny. It was about the size of an American dime, worn, thin, and clearly very old. The coin was eventually identified by Scandinavian numismatists as a Norwegian penny, minted during the reign of King Olaf the Quiet, sometime between 1067 and 1093 AD. The problem is that the coin was found on the coast of Maine, not in Europe, not in a recent settlement, in a Native American trade village in soil layers that had not been disturbed for hundreds of years. The official Viking arrival in North America has been documented. The settlement of Lonso Meadows in Newfoundland, dating to around the year 1000, is proof that Norse explorers reached the continent. But Newfoundland is over 1,000 miles from coastal Maine. How did an 11th century Norwegian coin end up in a Native American village on the coast of Maine, far from any known Viking outpost? The most accepted theory is that the coin made its way south through indigenous trade routes, passed from hand to hand over land and along the coast, until it was lost at the Goddard Site. That would mean the original Viking presence in North America was either larger than recorded, or that long-distance trade between indigenous peoples and Norse explorers reached far deeper into the continent than anyone has documented. A single small coin, sitting quietly in a museum in Maine, continues to suggest that the official story of how Europe and North America first touched is incomplete. Number 1. The Nazca lines from the ground. On a high plateau in southern Peru, etched into the dry desert floor, there are hundreds of enormous figures: spiders, hummingbirds, monkeys, geometric shapes, long straight lines that stretch for miles across the landscape. They are the Nazca lines, and they were created by the Nazca culture between approximately 500 BC and 500 AD by removing the dark surface stones to expose the lighter soil beneath. The strange part is not that they exist. The strange part is how they can be seen. The Nazca lines are only fully visible from the air. Standing on the ground next to one of them, a visitor sees a faint line in the dirt, sometimes indistinguishable from a footpath. Standing on a low hilltop, the visitor can occasionally see the outline of a shape, but the full image, the spider, the hummingbird, the monkey, can only be appreciated from hundreds of feet in the air. The Nazca people did not have aircraft. There is no surviving evidence of large platforms, towers, or balloons that could have given them an aerial perspective. Some researchers have suggested that they might have used simple hot air balloons made of cloth and reeds, and limited tests have shown this is theoretically possible. But there is no archaeological proof. This raises a quiet question that has never been fully answered. Why would a civilization spend generations creating enormous works of art that they themselves could not properly see? Many theories exist: religious offerings to gods who flew above, maps of underground water sources where the lines align with hidden aquifers, astronomical calendars marking the rising of stars on specific days, ritual pathways walked during ceremonies where the shape mattered less than the act of walking it. But the most basic version of the mystery never goes away. Massive figures, carefully proportioned, perfectly aligned, drawn in places that could only be properly appreciated from the sky, created by people who, according to every accepted record, had no way to get there. The Nazca lines are not lost. They are not hidden. They are sitting in the open desert today, easy to visit. And yet they are still one of the strangest objects ever placed on Earth, in a position they should not have been able to choose. Thank you for watching and sticking till the end. We've got plenty more videos coming in the future. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. See you in the next one.